Data protection and privacy teams are under more pressure than ever with new laws, AI oversight, data breaches, and the constant expectation to do more with fewer resources.
That's why TrustArc built a modern privacy and data protection management platform powered by Arc Intelligence. It unifies your tools, automates the work that slows you down, and surfaces what matters most right when you need it.
From guided quick actions to our intelligent assistant, Ask Arc, you get credible, contextual answers backed by expert research, not generic AI guesses.
Finally, privacy that works the way privacy pros work.
Learn how TrustArc helps teams move faster with confidence at trustarc.com/serious-privacy. That's trustarc.com/serious-privacy.
This is Serious Privacy,
powered by TrustArc.
Here are your hosts, Paul Breitbart and Kay Royal.
In this week's episode, another round of updates on what is happening around the world. We have a surprising adequacy decision from Dubai, some GDPR fines on the horizon, registration requirements, data breaches, and new laws in Georgia and India, as well as some other tidbits. So did you think it was a quiet summer? Then think again. My name is Paul Breitbart.
And I'm Kay Royal, and welcome to Serious Privacy. So, Paul, I think there have been some things that have happened that just kind of jumped up and bit me this past week. I wasn't expecting them. I guess maybe I should have been. We're supposed to be omnipotent?
Well, I mean, this is August, so it is supposed to be quiet. Yes, this is my European perspective, but August is supposed to be quiet. Nothing should be happening. No major events should be happening. And yet we have a full episode.
And we have a full episode. We might just have to put our hands in the cookie jar, cookies, and pull out the one that we like the best to talk about. But let's go with an unexpected question. If you had to eat one vegetable for a whole month and no others, what vegetable would you eat?
Oh, that's a horrid question. Looking at the weather, is it a type of vegetable or one very specific vegetable?
I can go with type. I'm okay with that.
Well, then probably I would go with lettuce for the summer, because then with all the different varieties of lettuce, you can still have some variation, and especially now in the summer, then that's actually, I think, would be doable. If not that, then probably eggplant, because it's something that you can still use in lots of different ways and have some variety on your plate.
Very nice.
So how about you?
My brain has been running amok with potential answers, and it might have to go with tomato, which is really a fruit, not a vegetable. So I'll start some controversy here.
It's a nightshade.
It means I can still have pizza and spaghetti.
That's true. Although you can have those with eggplant. Not so much, I guess, with lettuce, but
Right. But yeah, spaghetti with lettuce would be really interesting. I don't know. That one I didn't come from the book. It just came off the top of the head. Okay, let's go.
And here we are, Serious Privacy Cooking Show again.
Exactly. One day it's going to happen. Let's go to the news. So there are some things we can just throw at you that these things happen. Go look them up. Make sure you don't miss them. And then some other things that we'll talk about. So there are some pretty significant ones to talk about. And I know which one's top of my mind.
Go ahead.
What about you?
No, you go first. I've got a few in mind. I've got a whole list of things that happened that are interesting or noteworthy, but
you
seem to be very eager to discuss one. So go ahead.
I am. This one is just, it really, when I saw it, I was like, what? So the Dubai International Financial Center has recognized California as adequate. It's given them an adequacy determination. And I was not expecting it. The headline is first of its kind adequacy decision regarding California Consumer Privacy Act. That one just kind of hit me out of left field. I mean, last week we were talking about California, talking about trying to get adequacy. Didn't occur to me adequacy to Dubai's International Financial Center. I mean, it's momentous. It is absolutely momentous. So it is, they recognize what they call the amended CCPA and the California Privacy Protection Agency as an international organization ensuring adequate data protection for purposes of personal data and transferring it across borders. And it says it meets all the requirements of it, and the fact that they're, membership in several international
Mhm.
efforts as well.
Bodies.
But this one hit me out of left field. I'm not going to lie. I'm like, what? But interesting. So how does this tie into what we were talking about last week about rumors of California potentially seeking adequacy under GDPR? I mean, this kind of bolsters up that
Right.
effort.
Yeah, I think a few things. First of all, the whole process on adequacy for the IFC, we discussed a couple of weeks ago with Laurie Baker
Yeah.
as well. So if you haven't listened to that episode yet, I recommend that you do. When it comes to the IFC and adequacy, the way I read the adequacy assessment is that this is a unilateral determination by the Dubai Commissioner. So there was not a request from California, hey guys, can you please give us adequacy, which is the habit for European adequacy decisions. This
Right.
looks like it was the own initiative of the Dubai Commissioner, or at least their office, to start an assessment for California, given that it is a major new privacy and data protection law. I'm still a bit surprised.
Right. And California is a huge contributor to world finance. I mean, a lot of moving and shaking.
They
going on
are.
in
And
California. Pardon the pun.
yeah, and I'm still a bit surprised, and that is mainly for what I also mentioned last week, and that is the scope of application of the legislation. It would not apply to the data of people in Dubai, even if that data is transferred to California. So from that perspective, I think it's a little strange. Of course, when you look at the levels of protection offered by the CCPA and the CPRA, and together the amended CCPA and the regulations, I think most of us will agree that it does offer a high level of protection. And that also
Yeah.
last week was not my concern. It is the scope of application and the fact that, at least from the European perspective, an adequacy decision would likely be a longer conversation also with California authorities, which could lead to the idea that California would be conducting foreign policy, which they would not be allowed to do in the United
Right.
States. So I think it's a bit of a mixed bag. I think it's laudable that the DIFC is looking at all these laws and conducting their assessments. They have their ethical data management risk index that they use, their standardized approach for how to assess all these third countries. And I think this document that they published, the adequacy assessment itself, it's 32 pages. It's fairly granular, is also a good example for at least Middle Eastern companies to see, okay, so what are we supposed to do when we start looking at data transfers to other jurisdictions?
Yeah. Interesting. Very interesting. Okay. So now let's go to the list that we kind of prepared to talk about, because that one just hit me by surprise this morning. I checked on Delaware. I do not believe the governor has signed Delaware's privacy law yet, but I'm checking once again while we're live. Nope, I don't believe the governor has signed, so still waiting on that one, and I haven't seen any significant progress on any of the others.
The tally is still at 12 to 13.
Yeah. So just a holding pattern on that one. That's fine. There's still 4 states that have bills in committee that haven't come out of committee yet. I haven't gone and looked up each one to see how far close they are. And I believe there is 1 state that still has the possibility of a bill being proposed this late in the year, but I'm not going to hold my breath on that one. Although the U.S. government...
Still, we've seen a lot of progress that we did not expect for this year.
Absolutely. That was not my number. I don't think I chose 6 or 7. That wasn't my number. We might have to look at that again for next year, but the U.S. government has some proposed changes to COPPA, so calling it COPPA 2.0, more than likely addressing, because I haven't gone and read this newest version that's proposed, but if it's anything like the other versions, it's mainly proposing some tightening language and then increasing the age that it applies to.
Okay. So another update. A couple of weeks ago, we spoke about the Norwegian suspension of data processing by Meta. That was announced. Meta had until the 14th of August to comply, and it is unlikely that they will. Meta is not very responsive to the requests from the Norwegian Data Protection Authority, And that means that as of 14 August, indeed, the Norwegian DPA will start levying their fine of 1 million Norwegian kroner per day, which is about $100,000 or 100,000 euros. So that's as of next week. And Meta has announced some changes and has said that they will start moving towards consent-based advertising. That dates back to the Irish DPC decision from back in January of 2023, but that they will take various months to make that happen. Right. We discussed that last week as well. That is taking too long, so the Norwegians will push through and also start levying the fines, collecting the fines, at least until November 3rd, or until such time that Meta will comply. And we know that in the meantime, likely early September, the European Data Protection Board will also discuss the Norwegian decision and see whether it should be extended to all of the European economic area. So that for Meta.
Yeah, it's interesting watching the progress, because that was a 5-year lawsuit going on for a long time.
I think it's even longer, but yeah, this has been going since forever.
Speaking of Meta, does bring to mind California. Also, the California Privacy Protection Agency did announce that it will review data privacy practices for connected vehicles. So your connected vehicle technologies, your Internet of Things, because everything in that car is connected. Your entertainment, your phone, your location, the cameras that are in there, all of these. So they are taking a particular interest in that. And as we've seen for some of the past efforts of the CPPA, once they take an interest, they will move towards enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to be interesting to watch there.
Yeah. Other enforcement on the horizon comes from the Channel Islands, and in this case, especially from Guernsey. As you may be aware, in the Channel Islands, both Jersey and Guernsey, like in the UK, you are still required to register with the Data Protection Authority and also pay an annual fee if you have business operations there, whether you are established on the island or just do business on the island, you need to register with the Data Protection Authority. Guernsey has now announced that they will start taking legal action against companies that have failed to register.
Nice.
Jersey has not taken that decision yet, but might also happen, of course, in the future. But this is something that organizations should be aware of. There are other jurisdictions in the world. I believe Turkey also requires registration. There are others. So if you do business outside of the European Union, outside of the United States, always do check if there is a registration requirement with the local Data Protection Authority. They will check companies' registers. They will check websites and local activity to find out if you are open for business in that jurisdiction. If you are and you have not registered, you may get a friendly request to do so after all. You may get a warning letter, but you could also be sanctioned with a fine.
Okay, good. Good for them.
So that's another one. Then while we are in the English-speaking world, 2 major data breaches. Last week, we discussed the bank that disclosed information about Nigel Farage. This week, we have the Electoral Commission in the United Kingdom that keeps the electoral roll.
Heard about that one.
They have been subject of a complex cyber attack, or so they claim. So they've been hacked, basically. Yeah. How complex or not, every company and every organization always claims it's complex. So that remains to be seen.
It's complex for them to figure out the damage that was done.
Well, that's for sure, because it looks like copies of the electoral register from between 2014 and 2022 have been accessed by the criminals.
And as y'all know, political affiliation and thoughts and everything in Europe is considered special categories of data. So for those of you who in the U.S. are going, who cares if electoral rolls? It matters.
It matters. And
we wouldn't like our votes accessed.
No, and not everybody should have access to everything, right? And this equates to the data of about 40 million people. So it's also a lot of data. It is not yet known whether the information has actually been downloaded or only been accessed. So it's also unclear what could happen with the data. That's all subject to investigation. So this has actually been under investigation for quite a while already. And as yet, it's not clear when we will see some of the outcomes. It seems that they first spotted the attack already in October of 2022. And that by then, it has already been ongoing for over a year. So complex, maybe, but also it seems that some of these cybersecurity systems might not have been completely functioning the way they should have if those
Right.
kind of alerts were not triggered. So we'll see. Also, the Information Commissioner's Office is involved. A second data breach, again, public sector in the United Kingdom, happened at the Police Service of Northern Ireland earlier this week. Here it was clearly human error, so no complex cyber attack or something. There was a Freedom of Information request about the number of people in each rank in each district. And while preparing the file, also the names and surnames of the police officers and civilian staff were included in the spreadsheet that was made available to the public. Apparently, this has only been online for a couple of hours before the mistake was spotted. And of course, it is a lot of personal data, but it is only, between parentheses, only the names and ranks of police officers, but not, for example, contact details or their personal address. Nevertheless,
Or anything like that, which makes it a little bit,
yeah, a little bit less concerning, but still
a little bit
a
less.
very big data breach. And also this one is under investigation by the ICO.
Yeah. Well, and then that kind of brings you back to the MOVEit breach, which is global. It's the MOVEit, a file transfer technology that came out, I believe, in June. It was announced. A lot of people dealt with it in July. More and more companies that have been impacted or becoming public. So one of the better ones to watch to know what companies are impacted is Con Briefing, KON Briefing. That site has a lot of companies listed that have been shown to have been impacted by the MOVEit breach or the MOVEit vulnerability, which breached the files. And I will say that I think there were 620 companies last listed, and some of them may be double dipping. It may be that a company is impacted because their vendor is impacted and their vendor is already listed. So some of these may be double dipping and counting how many companies are a victim of it, because it may be they didn't use MOVEit themselves, but maybe their vendor did, or their fourth party vendor did down the road. So as companies are researching what's happening with MOVEit, they're doing. But I will say that if you go and you look at a lot of the victims of the companies that are doing it, there's a lot of public entities there, government entities there, a lot of universities, a lot of financial entities. So I know that here in the U.S., they've said that retirement funds have been, and then someone alerted me yesterday that even though their parents got a notification that their retirement fund had been accessed, it said no damage, but then apparently they got ransomware on top of that, so the parents couldn't see what their records were anyway. I don't know much about that. If anybody does, please let me know. I haven't seen a lot of news on, ransomware from people following the MOVEit breach to be able to get it back. But if you know anything, let me know. I haven't found anything. So it's globally, there are a lot of companies that were a victim of the MOVEit breach. Today, or yesterday, there was an announcement of I guess by the time this comes out, it'd be a week or so old, of the Intel vulnerability that's out. I think they're calling it Downfall. I don't know much about that yet. It's not a lot public of what companies are impacted with that one yet, but that's another vulnerability to keep your eye on to find out whether or not your company has been impacted by that. It very well could be. This could hit your infrastructure. So make sure you check on that too. But in speaking of breaches and being back here, this isn't really a breach, but it is news. Google had filed for a summary judgment on their illegal tracking when someone entered incognito mode. That has been rejected. So they are still in court on that one. They will not have a summary judgment. So that might be another one to watch, to keep an eye on. I mean, doesn't it seem weird that when we talk about a lot of these things, Paul, it's the same companies over and over?
Yeah, and then the question is that because of regulatory preferences, or is it because they screw up so much?
Right? Is it because they're so big and they're so massive that their little paws are in everything? Who knows? But it is.
Very well possible.
All right. India's parliamentary bill moved forward a little bit more. So we're seeing some advances on that.
It's a done deal.
Okay. That know if it's done?
Well, yeah, you can tick the box because it only needs a signature from the president, and that in India is a formality. Apparently, both the lower house and the higher house have adopted the legislation without any amendments, also without the support of the opposition. So it seems it is still a bit of a controversial law, but it has been adopted, and we don't know all the details yet. We don't know exactly when it will apply. Hopefully, it is not something like the Chinese PIPL that applied almost overnight.
Right. That we're still getting clarifications on.
Yeah, and I mean, it's likely that India's law will apply somewhere in the course of 2024 or early 2025, but we'll invite some India experts to see if they can join us for an episode to discuss this legislation in full detail.
And to let y'all know, it was originally introduced 2018. And so we've been waiting on this for 5 years.
It was introduced and it was repealed, and it was introduced and it was repealed. This version was actually only introduced a couple of weeks ago and has been
pretty fast.
Basically rushed through Parliament because I guess that they started to realize that being the largest country in the world without data protection legislation in place could also be damaging to their economy.
Absolutely.
So the legislation is done. It's there. And once the president will sign, which likely will be in a couple of days' time, so before the release of this episode, India will have their personal data protection bill. And as said, we'll have more details for you in one of the coming episodes.
Okay. And speaking of...
And that was not the only bill that passed, because we also have no data protection bill in Georgia. And that is not the state of Georgia, that is the country of Georgia, former part of the Soviet Union in the Caucasus. So they introduced data protection legislation, quite GDPR-like in its setup. So it contains requirements related to individual rights, to adequacy, to legal basis, and all of that. Interestingly, the deadline for individual rights is only 10 days following the receipt of a request.
Oh, interesting.
And fines can range to 175,000 euros or dollars, which is about 500,000 Georgian lari as their currency. That is the maximum fine that can be imposed. It can be that you also need to appoint a representative in Georgia under this new legislation. Also here, a registration requirement will apply if you do business in Georgia, if you process personal data in Georgia. And legal basis include consent, obviously, but also performance of a contract, a legal obligation, and also certain kinds of legitimate interests can be used. They need to be important, legitimate interest, unless there is the overriding interest of the data subject, but also, for example, public interest can qualify. So indeed, also here it is very GDPR-like, maybe based a little more on the UK GDPR than the EU GDPR, by the looks of it.
Okay, good. I think some others that stick in my mind, I'm not sticking to the US, I'm not sticking to Canada or North America, I'm not sticking to Asia altogether. I'm kind of bouncing back and forth, which is what I felt like in the past week or two with the privacy developments. But I'll throw out there that China's Cybersecurity Administration Center has issued draft guidance for service providers that hold data on more than 1 million people to have at least one compliance audit a year. So they're issuing some draft rules around that. They also made a clarification on what spying is defined as. So that's interesting when you look at what the service providers need. So it's really interesting there. So for that, so we have a little bit more guidance on China, as you know, recently, or not so recently, but in the past little while, they also issued their standard contractual clauses for China, which we've talked about before. But still, if you've got a global program and you're building in your data transfer arrangements, then make sure you do account for China's standard contractual clauses as well if you have any business there. That also came along the same line as there were some statements issued on the thingy about how once the thingy is in place and a company is certified under the EU-US data transfer framework, data protection framework?
Data privacy framework.
Data privacy framework, the EU-US data privacy framework. I know it stands for DPF. The thingy, they're saying that guidance came out saying that once a company certifies under that and they are official, then nothing else is required. They are not required to stick to the standard contractual clauses. They are not required to stick to others. So this goes along the same concern that Paul and I shared that, well, are companies really going to give up their standard contractual clauses and their DPAs that they've negotiated down to the nth degree? You can't say that a DPA is thrown out the door because it wouldn't cover the exact same things.
Well, I mean, it's still a contract. So the contractual obligations will likely still apply between the parties. It is just no longer the legal basis to actually conduct the cross-border transfer. And I think that is the main difference. But the way that the model clauses have been drafted by the European Commission, they, of course, also read as a data processing agreement.
Yes.
For those purposes, they will stand. It is just a contract that has been approved by the parties. It will no longer be a valid legal basis for transfer. Similar to the Privacy Shield obligations following the annulment of the Shield, all those obligations remained in place. They could just no longer serve as the basis for the data transfer.
Exactly. But I don't know how this is going to go over. I mean, I really don't. I'm eager to see how it's going to work in practice for companies to have it in place, whether or not the people they have the standard contractual clauses in place are going to drop them or not. If they don't work as a data transfer mechanism, they're not exactly.
No, I mean, I think the existing ones probably will stay in force, but I also would not be that eager to sign new standard contractual clauses if a company is self-certified under the data privacy framework. Then I'd rather just negotiate a data protection agreement, a data processing agreement, and then actually negotiate and not sign at the dot, than signing yet another series of standard contractual clauses.
Which are not commercially friendly whatsoever.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. NIST published their draft cybersecurity framework 2.0. They're seeking feedback on that. A lot of companies adhere to the cybersecurity framework. So if you have thoughts on that and you want to issue it, they have published it. They're seeking feedback on it. So make sure that you pay attention to that. Can't think of almost anything else. Like I said, it's like privacy popcorn. Something we may have been watching for years, all of a sudden got hot.
Yeah. Well, there is one more thing because Noip has found another target.
Uh-oh. Color me surprised.
Instead of Meta, they are now targeting Ryanair. And Ryanair is a low-cost airline here in Europe. I guess a bit similar to Southwest Airlines in the US.
Okay.
Fairly low cost, fairly low service. And they want you to book directly through their website or through their mobile app. And to discourage people from booking flights through a travel agent, they actually installed a verification process that also involves facial recognition. And you can imagine that Noip does not like that because they consider, and I tend to agree with them, that there should be, first of all, no difference whether you book via a travel agent or directly on the website of an airline, but also that a facial recognition verification process certainly is not something that would be necessary. So a verification via biometric data, which is also special categories of personal data if used for identification purposes, seems a bit too drastic.
Yeah.
And this file has been this complaint has been filed in Spain, again, probably also to test the cooperation mechanism of the Data Protection Authority. And Noip has calculated that based on Ryanair's turnover in 2022, the maximum fine would be 192 million euros. Not sure whether it would come to that, but in any case, it's another complaint to follow. Could take a few years before we hear more.
And the last one that I have, because I know we're coming to time, is Argentina. Their data protection agency, the Agency for Access to Public Information, they are investigating a cryptocurrency provider called WorldCoin. Now, there's also authorities in Europe, in Kenya investigating if this is on their biometric collections and their security measures built into it. So that's going to be an interesting one to follow.
Yeah, and this is an interesting one because WorldCoin is not just a cryptocurrency. This is actually something that is developed by the people behind OpenAI, that is responsible for ChatGPT. And you see that this has been launched, this project, 2 weeks ago only. And you see that a lot of data protection authorities are jumping on this bandwagon because they don't trust it. WorldCoin claims that they will give away free money if they can use your facial scan for whatever purposes that they like. And obviously, certainly in third world countries, in poorer countries, development countries, this is something where a lot of people might be interested. So not just Argentina has launched this, but you see that also the ICO, the Spanish DPA, some of the German DPAs, France, Japan, Indonesia, and indeed Kenya are looking into this. In Kenya, Coin is no longer allowed. They are not allowed to sign up new users as per the government for data privacy concerns.
Yep, so it's going to be an interesting one to watch. But this
another
also...
bad idea from the people behind OpenAI.
This also brings in mind the concept that privacy are for those with money, because this is targeting people who want or need money. I mean, rich people can always want more money too, but it is much more of a motivator for those who don't have it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So I guess that wraps up another episode of Serious Privacy. I know we've been a bit all over the place, literally
A privacy platform
this week, but there's been so many small things happening. So I think it's good to list those as well. We'll have the more in-depth episode coming for you, as well as promised, including on the new India data protection law, which will have an impact for a lot of companies out there. If you like the episode, rate and review us in your favorite app or on your favorite podcast platform. Join the conversation on LinkedIn. Find us under Serious Privacy. You'll find Kay on social media as Heart of Privacy, myself as Europol B. Until next week, goodbye.
Bye, y'all.
That was Serious Privacy.
If you're a data protection or privacy professional, you already know the pressure. Non-stop regulatory change, AI oversight, internal demands, and the expectation to somehow stay ahead of it all. And the old patchwork of tools just isn't cutting it anymore.
No. That's why TrustArc created a modern privacy management platform powered by Arc Intelligence. The TrustArc platform brings your workflows, evidence, research, tasks, and applications all together in one unified and intelligent workspace so you don't waste time digging, clicking, or context switching.
With Ask Arc, your privacy assistant, you can ask plain language questions about laws, jurisdictions, or even your own program data, and get credible, cited answers based on Nimity research and more than 1,000 global laws. It's explainable, transparent, and purpose-built for data protection and privacy.
So if you need to add a vendor, create a cookie banner, or start an assessment, quick actions take formally complex tasks, turn them into bite-sized guided workflows to save you time.
It's a platform that thinks like you, works like you, and helps you move faster with confidence, whether you're a seasoned DPO or you're just getting started.
See how modern privacy gets done. Explore Arc at trustarc.com/serious-privacy. That's trustarc.com/serious-privacy.